Okay.
There we go. So, hello.
Hello.
To start off with, would you like to say your name and where you are?
Yes, my name is Mikael Sonne, and I'm in my home in Denmark, in the middle of Denmark, actually, in the part of Denmark called Jutland, where I have my home, and in connection with my home, I also have my Gestalt Institute, and it's just here in the countryside, and we have the river just outside there in the background.
Lovely. I love looking at people's windows. Wonderful. So the first question for you is, who are you as a human being? Who are you as a person? And that can be anything about passions or values or qualities about yourself.
Yeah, it's a very big question. Who am I? I'm a psychologist, and I think that does have some importance for me to say that I'm a psychologist, and we're in Denmark, the Danish Psychological Association can approve you for specialization in psychotherapy, and I have that what do you call it, approval, or and also the my training institute has this approval, so the psychologists that I train can use that for their own specialization in psychotherapy, approved by the Danish Psychological Association. It does make, I think it's important for me, I say this because I think Gestalt therapy is so fantastic that I would like that more psychologists go into this, and unfortunately it seems like it's getting less. I mean, yeah, other psychotherapies that seems like being taking over in academia and in the university. The way where psychologists are trained, educated. Well, but that's one thing. I'm a psychologist, and I'm a father of two children, grown-ups. Boy 34, daughter 30. 15 years ago, I divorced from their mother, and I now live here with my wife, and have done that for 14 years. I had this place actually for 30 years, doing my training groups here, and before that, did in other places. I've been doing these training groups for, I think, 38 years. Yeah, I'm 69. I will turn 70 this year, this fall. Time goes.
And what about you as a person?
Yeah.
What would you? I think these are probably some of your passions, but I'm curious about perhaps some values that you hold in your life or qualities about yourself.
I think I'm quite a sensitive person that does have some, which is I think a very important quality for me when working with people and groups and systems. And in many ways, I'm glad about this sensitivity. It also gives me some difficulties, I think, sometimes, and people close to me will think it's not always easy for them. Sometimes not for me either. But I know this as a quality that has been with me always, I think. Sensitivity to sounds, to light, to many things, but also then a capacity to grasp many details in different situations, and in working with people individually and people in groups and so on. So that's one thing. And then I tend also to be quite persistent in pursuing goals, which it also has, positive and also negative. And then I think I'm basically a very curious person. yeah.
And what about
That's some,
values? Is there a value that you hold in your life or in your work?
oh, yeah. I think I'm aware of the value of equality and justice and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Honesty, accepting what is. Mm, yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know what to say else about that.
Okay, that's fine. So I'm interested in a little bit about your history, and I wonder what comes to mind as an event or as a set of circumstances in your life that you would say have really shaped who you are somehow.
I don't have any sort of really traumatic things, I think.
It's okay.
No, but I say, well, some people have, you know.
Mhm.
And I think I was raised in a sort of privileged family context. Of course, there's some things that, I mean, like my parents divorced when I was 9. I think that had certainly had an impact. And um, I can see different things, you know, having children was a big change in my life. Uh, Later, I think what made it when I made a big shift was when I started for myself as a psychologist and started my groups and all that. And it actually started. It might have started anyway, but I got lung tuberculosis. Probably picked it up in India, I think. But that 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 pushed me in a way to leave working in the psychiatric field and starting for myself.
Hmm.
That was when I was 30. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So
yeah.
you've mentioned your age, and I'm wondering how you're experiencing this time in your life or age in general.
It's strange that I'm that old. I think because you know, somehow I don't feel that old, but well, that's how it is. I can still I still work some, but I use this possibility that I don't have to work. I don't have to make money now. I can do what I would like to do, and I think I've been working quite a lot. I've had these training groups. I've had some programs for leaders, and I've done organizational work and yeah, supervision groups, a lot of different things.
Hmm.
And now I'm not doing so much.
Okay. So another question, and some people have more to say about this than others, is how you have come to understand or experience yourself within your gender or as a man. And that's obviously related to your context, to wherever you are.
It's not something that I really think about. Doesn't, no, I cannot really say anything about it. I noticed I hear some of your interviews, people saying they am a white male. Of course, I know I'm a white male, but it doesn't it doesn't make any really meaning for me to think of it as being something that yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you mentioned the word privilege. So I also am curious what privilege and power mean to you in your life.
I think with privilege you have certain responsibilities. I think living in this social democracy we have in Denmark, I mean, for me it's yeah, I see these values as equality and justice. I think that social justice, I think I think it's very, very important, and you say privilege and power. What should I say about that? I don't know. When I say privilege in my upbringing, it's like it's very free upbringing. My parents were doctors, both of them medical doctors and psychiatrists. My mother was, she has had probably a strong impact on me in many ways. She was early into all kinds of therapy. She was in analysis herself. I remember when I was a child, and she was interested in all kinds of new therapy. Actually, she was the one who introduced me to Gestalt therapy. And I remember sometimes it was too much to have a mother, being so much, in that field. Mm-hmm. I remember having, just looking at some of the old stuff I have, and I found an audio tape from when I was 7. This is, more than 60 years ago. And we were making these, on the initiative of my mother, making role plays where we played each other in the family. Yeah. It was, some of it was fun and fine and okay, sometimes was too much,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now I'm worried about my children. Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you mention from the question on privilege, just the fact that your mother accessed all of these different things. And I think that's true. I think that is a point of privilege. And what we do with it makes an impact.
Yeah. I think it's like, what we wanted to do and educate ourselves was really, anything was okay. Maybe it was too free sometimes, and maybe there was a subtle, thing about maybe it's a good thing to get an academic degree anyway. So, yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so you said that you found Gestalt through your mother. Do you want to say more about how you came into it? Or?
Yeah, I think I was at my first Gestalt workshop when I was 20. Just started studying psychology. And this was something my mother arranged for some of her colleagues, and I had a chance to join. And during my psychology study, I attended different workshops with Danish Gestalt therapists and also some foreign Gestalt therapists. There was a woman, Natasha Mann. Her real name is Natalie. I remember I talked to Irvin Miriam Polster, and she remembered her from their training with Fritz. She was also a second generation Gestalt therapist. And she lived in Denmark for some decades. And I went to some workshops there, and I took a 3-year training program with her and a guy called Barry Simmons from who lived in Italy at that time. So this was the start of it. And I think, also then when I was studying, my mother was in the States to train with Bob Golding and later with Irvin Miriam Poster. And I went to Irvin Miriam then later in 81. I took my first training there.
Interesting. So what is it that you found in Gestalt? Why have you stayed with it all of these years?
Yeah, I tried some other things like hypnotherapy. The first place I worked as a psychologist, we learned some CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. I thought it was a bit boring, and I missed this freedom to be creative and use yourself in the way that you can do in Gestalt therapy. And I never thought it made any meaning to leave this. Yeah, so I feel very comfortable being in this this way of working, and think that other schools I've looked at and know people from, I think it seems too limiting to me. So I think it's the wide frames that are in Gestalt therapy that are attractive. I also think maybe these broad frames are what makes it what is a difficulty in Gestalt therapy, because different Gestalt therapists define Gestalt therapy differently, and makes it hard to have this very clear, comprehensive understanding of what is the basis of the Gestalt therapy.
So more than getting into what it is or isn't, I'm curious how you have been affected as a person by Gestalt in your life.
I mean, it's been such a profound part of my being in the world since I first came into Gestalt. I think, as I say, the freedom to use your own creativity, use my own creativity in that. I mean, it has meant everything. I think it's hard just to say a few things about that, because it's always thought that it's fantastic to have what do you call it, a job as a psychologist, and all the training you get, it's really, to give yourself something. So that's really fantastic, I think. So I took all these courses but just because I was curious and interested about myself, and fortunately at the same time I could use them to get these grades or degrees, what do you say, specialized, approved of the Psychological Association, being able to make these groups, also having this approved. And so I think that I feel so very lucky about that.
And after all of the years that you've spent doing this, do you feel like you're part of a Gestalt community?
Yeah, I do. I know when I it's a bit double, I know you talked to Hannah Hostrup, who's a good friend of mine, and we thought here in Denmark that different institutes, and one time we thought, well, let's make an umbrella organization for these people, so they don't, because it seems when you said the Gestalt community, it seems like there are different communities. So we wanted to make an umbrella organization to go beyond these separate institutes, and they have separate interests in defining what is the Gestalt community. So I think that we did that almost 20 years ago, and that has been very interesting. And but when I come to like an AGT or conference or Gestalt leaders meeting, I've been to that in Greece some years ago. It's nice to meet people who have some of the same interest and so same language and same terminology. So at the same time, I think it can be a little bit what do you call it, a closed community. So what I've been interested in the recent years is to see what is outside the Gestalt community and how do we relate to that, and how do we communicate with professionals that are not psychologists, not the Gestalt therapists, but maybe are in different schools. And I've been doing some, working together with a friend of mine, Jan Tunesvang, who's a professor and director of the Department of Psychology here in Aarhus University. And another guy who's very much into meditation, but we are all trained Gestalt therapists. And we wanted to, we made an article for the what they call it, the American Psychological Association's, what they call it, psychotherapy theory, research, practice, training. This is a journal they make. We made this article about Gestalt therapy and cognitive therapy. And we, this is a peer review, and they kept getting it back to us because there was too much Gestalt jargon. A lot of the words we use in the Gestalt community, people outside the community don't understand what we're talking about. It's like there are too many metaphors and jargon. So so it forced us to try to define some of these words, and that became a very interesting process. We got this article out in this journal, but this was the start then to further try to develop the terminology of Gestalt, and we made what we called an experiment, a series of a one-year program. We called it an experiment because we didn't know where it would lead. So Jan and another guy, James Hamming, and I, we did this for some years, doing these programs, like postgraduate programs for Gestalt people. And what should I say? Well, I know it's a lot about the Gestalt theory. It's not so personal, but it still is personal because it was my.
So I mean, it's what you're doing with it, right?
And curiosity, all this curiosity. Suddenly, after years when I had not been very interested in theory, and because maybe every time when I was younger, I talk about one issue, my mother would come with, read these books. Oh shit. And so I think of myself as a very atheoretical psychologist. And sometimes I wonder, how did I get that degree? But anyways, then the later years, I've become more interested and curious about this theory thing, especially my friend Jan Tunesvang, who is a professor and very much theoretical. So we worked on this, and things like field theory, some of these things that are often hard to grasp in Gestalt therapy, and there are different definitions of field theory, and where do I go? Jan and James and I, we had a study group ourselves for some years, and then we thought this is too exciting not to involve others, and that's how we started these programs, inviting other people in. And after having worked with that for years, we have made a book called Integrative Gestalt Practice, and this is the book. Subtitle: Transforming Our Ways of Working with People. This book came out in Karnak, and now it's on Routledge. But what we have been, and this is the result of these experiments we did for some years with the groups. And one thing we have invited in there and is a basic model from Ken Wilber. Okay. Who you might know, I don't know. You know? Yeah. It's integral thinking. His call it integral perspectivism. The very basic model that he has is the quadrant model, where you're distinguishing between singular, plural, and interior and exterior.
Mm-hmm.
So we think that this very basic model of his is very, very useful for systematizing what we talk about as field theory and Gestalt therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people, Gestalt people, would say, "Oh, that's too,
It's a square."
models." We don't need that models, and we already do that. We do
Mm-hmm.
distinguish between the person's phenomenology, our own phenomenology, what is the behavior of the person, and our own behavior, and what is the context, interior, exterior. But yes, of course, good Gestalt therapists do that. But
Mm-hmm.
to introduce this more systematized way and train your brain to differentiate
Mm-hmm.
when you're working with the whole, to differentiate in these four perspectives to better integrate. We think that's so beneficial, so useful. So this is one of the things we introduce in this book, and then also definition of some of these basic terms we have in Gestalt therapy, like awareness, contact, and so on. And we relate it to what has been going on in psychology for the last, since Pearl's life. Whereas it seems, well, it's hard to say. I think there's not so much new in Gestalt literature. Well, that's a bit tough to say that, because there's a lot of interesting thing, of course, and there are different books that have made more systematized than Pearl's did, like, for instance, Polster's Gestalt Therapy Integrated. Hannah Hostrup has written a book on Gestalt Therapy, also very good. But I think what we're trying to do here is to see what has happened, what is current in research in memory, and what is in motivation research, and then because actually many of these things support Gestalt. So that's why it's, we should really take it in and yeah. So what we think is these things it would be good to if Gestalt people would write more, and also in these papers outside the Gestalt community.
Mm-hmm.
That's
interesting because I mean, you say, oh, it's not so personal, but I just love watching people light up when they talk about what they're actually interested in. So I think it is very personal, and I appreciate what you're saying about your work. And I'm wondering, I mean, you've mentioned a few of the things that you're sort of taking on or dealing with in your work. I wonder, do you identify these as challenges, or does something else come to mind as a challenge for yourself within Gestalt?
I think it's a very big challenge. I mean, this how to make Gestalt,
how to publish Gestalt in the American Psychological Association. Yeah, that's a challenge.
Yeah, that's a challenge. I mean, and I wish some more people would do that, but it does take hard work, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what you said about getting students to retrain their thinking and to see different ways, I see that.
But it's very exciting. It's very exciting to write this book. It's very exciting to do this teaching. We were so excited ourselves, the three of us, doing this, much more. Also, we had this, it should be interesting for ourselves. That was the main point, and it really was. And of course, the students can see that, and they love it. So it's interesting.
So is there anything that you're frustrated by, a challenge that you're still working on? I mean, the book has come out, the article has been approved.
I wish some more people would buy it, read. No.
Yes, there's that.
On a personal level, I think it's a challenge every time I have a job, every time I have to to stand up for a group. I'm always nervous. I'm always. I think I have this uncertainty in me, but it's also an openness.
Mm-hmm.
So challenges everywhere, but but this can Gestalt therapy survive? I remember Irving Poster used to say, this was back in the 80s when I was there, been there several times in La Jolla. And he would say that maybe Gestalt therapy won't survive because there's so many good things in Gestalt therapy that will be taken by other. And this is what has been happening a lot, I think. The third wave cognitive therapy, like acceptance and commitment therapy and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, they steal it from Gestalt. I remember Todd Burley, who we actually worked a lot together with also on this book, and he died just before we got it out. But he was very interested in this. We actually, together with Todd, we had what he named it, the Aarhus Gestalt Research Group. And he came here and stayed at my place also for several times. And we had this study group together with him, developing some of these thoughts. He was a Gestalt therapist who was also in the university, being a neuropsychologist. And we have too few of these people, I think, in our community. Mm-hmm. But yeah, okay, Todd said he once asked Stephen Hayes, who was this ACT guy, acceptance commitment, and he said, wow, this really looks a lot like Gestalt therapy. And according to Todd, Stephen Hayes said, yes, where do you think I took it from?
So he admitted it.
But there are so many fantastic things in Gestalt therapy, and this integration that Pearls and Laura and Fritz were able to make, taking things from and knowledge and from different places and integrated. It's basically it's such an integrative psychotherapy system. Mm-hmm. And therefore it's also makes very good meaning to continue this focus on what can we integrate from what has been found other places and still keep what is the core things in Gestalt, like organism, feel, self-regulation in the organism, environment, feel, and the tools like awareness, contact, and experiment.
Mm-hmm. So I'm also wondering what comes on the other side of those challenges. What are some of the highlight experiences that come to mind? I mean, have there been some moments that stay with you, either in sessions and trainings or experiences you've had yourself?
Personally, it stands out for me when Miriam or Irv said something acknowledging some of the pieces of work I've done. It stays with you, just a sentence, Mm-hmm. Irv saying, I really hate to say this, but you really did a good job there. Something like, small sentences, you just, oh, that's nice. Mm-hmm. So I also feel very good about some of the conferences we've been making here in Denmark. Came out of this Gestalt forum that Hannah and I initiated, but we had so many people. I had them here in connection to conferences with, for instance, Joseph Singer, Bob Resnick, Frank Stimmler, different people from abroad coming to these conferences, and then connected to that, having them do a workshop here at my place. Mm-hmm. So that has been fantastic, I think, to sit with people from different institutes, maybe different communities within the Gestalt community, like Lynn Jacobs, Bob Resnick, Joe Melnick, sitting here with this at this table and having chit chats. That has been
Well, it's
great.
nice. It's nice to be at the table. Thank you.
Yeah,
So I guess one of my last questions is what you see as next for yourself and for Gestalt from where you are.
Well, I'm in a situation where I'm not quite sure how much I shall retire or not. I have some ongoing groups. I don't do any 3-year training programs anymore. I think maybe as a guest lecturer somewhere, but I have some ongoing groups. I have a group of medical doctors, mostly general practitioners, coming twice a year. I've had that group for 30 years. Some of them have retired, some new have come in, and I have a group for leaders, also ongoing, some supervision groups. And I think this will just continue. But the nice thing for me is that there's such a very nice balance in doing other things and traveling that I hope I can do soon again. But yeah, my wife will stop her work this very soon, and so we will have just time for doing other things also. But I realize I do like to continue doing some therapy and supervision. I don't know, maybe write some more. I don't know.
So, I mean, you've talked about this integration. Do you have anything else that you would say about what should be or could be next for Gestalt?
I just hope it will survive. But I think it is important to look into, yeah, I think things we've been doing, try to see how can we make it, what we need to have people from outside the community see that this is fantastic. I know Gestalt therapy, the theoretical base of Gestalt therapy, it seems like there's not really a theory in a way. It's not a theory that we are an organism and this organism interact with the context. So and the field, it's sort of a strange thing to call it the field theory, because what is field? I mean, we can then discuss whether it's just the phenomenological field or it's the field as a whole. Or there's some discussions that can go on, but to try to define some of these basic elements in Gestalt therapy and do it in terminology that people outside the community will approve of. I think that's a very important thing if it shall survive. I'm not sure it can survive, because it's, well, of course it can somewhere, but maybe not in the professional psychological field. And that's such a pity, I think, because I think it's so much more comprehensive and whole than the other schools of psychotherapy. And also, I think what we also do, in our book, we call integrative Gestalt practice, because the Gestalt approach can be used in so many other contexts than psychotherapy. But it's strange because we talk about it as Gestalt therapy, and then the people that say they work with this approach in organizations, but they don't do Gestalt therapy. So that's why we say, why not call it Gestalt practice? Because it's we are practitioners using this basic Gestalt understanding. But well, as I say, I hope some more people will work in developing the terminology so it can be understood outside our own community.
Yeah. That would be nice. That would be nice. Yeah. Okay. I'm just wondering if there's anything else that you would like to add right now, either about yourself that you feel like I missed, or.
I think it's a very interesting project you're having, and it reminds me of two things. right now here in this Corona time, we have in Danish public television, we have this singing together separately, where
Okay.
some artists singing in the television, and people all around Denmark will meet, will sit and sing the same. So people are doing the same together. This is what, and another thing is that when I was studying psychology, I made an action research project where we used video as a means of bringing contact to people in a local community, and especially having people who are not so often in media to express their meaning and their thoughts, and in this way heightening awareness and consciousness about having impact on the local community, like traffic and housing and things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's fantastic media, and finding new ways to use it to have contact in the community.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very exciting, and I appreciate meeting you and meeting so many other people who otherwise I wouldn't. No, so I mean, even just for myself, it's been incredible. So
thank you.
All right. Well, nice thank you. Yeah. We'll leave it here then.